Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. This week's video is going to be all about development in the Vancouver area. There's lots to talk about. Developments being canceled because of high interest rates, developments being proposed that are going to bring thousands of new homes to the Lower Mainland area, and we're also going to talk about the most controversial development proposal for Vancouver that may get approved next week. Real quick before we get started, if this is your first time to the channel, my name is Hassan. I'm a real estate agent in the Vancouver area, and I make educational real estate content to help you on your real estate journey. I also make content designed to help you make your move in and around Vancouver. So if that sounds interesting to you and you want to talk with me one-on-one, there's a Calendly link in the description box below. You can book me, but regardless, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss a future video. All right, so we have lots to talk about. I'm just going to jump right into it. For starters, Minaru Square in Richmond. This is a project of around 400 units. Just sent out notices to purchasers that they are going to be canceling the project or postponing it indefinitely. So everyone is going to essentially get their deposits back. I believe they paid 20% deposits. The buyers get their deposits back. The project is on hold. They are citing increased interest rates, changes they're going to have to make to the development plan. So for you as a consumer of real estate, one of the things you want to take away from this is in the disclosure statement, when you're buying pre-sale, the developer will have a set of reasons that they can walk away from a deal. So if this happens or if that happens, they can walk away. They'll give you back your deposit. That disclosure statement is going to determine, do you just get your deposit back? Do you get deposit plus interest? And what are the reasons they can walk away? And sometimes those reasons are pretty vague. So for example, it may say something along the lines of, if we need to make a significant change to the development plan, we can choose to terminate this agreement and send you back your deposit. So it's pretty vague in terms of the reasons they can walk away and how it's defined. So you as a purchaser, that's not a clause in a disclosure statement that you can cross out, right? You can't cross it out, have them initial, and they're going to honor, you as an individual purchaser versus the scope of the project. But you just have to be familiar that the developer does have outs in these scenarios. They also mentioned rising interest rates as well. I think ultimately what's going to happen is they are going to apply for more density into the project to make the numbers work. So if you think about it, we've talked about it on my channel several times, interest rate increases through the roof over the last 14 months. If you're a developer, if you're anyone and you have any sort of construction financing, labor costs going up as well. Materials, I think, have stabilized. I'm not a builder, but from what I hear, materials have pretty much stabilized, but the labor costs have gone up as well. So when this happens on a developer's pro forma, margin gets wiped out. And sometimes the full set of margin gets wiped out, and now they're treading into loss territory, as we've seen. So in this case, this developer said, we can't move forward. They get their money back, their deposit back. The other thing to keep in mind is when you purchase a pre-sale contract, oftentimes the developer will have up until a year to get their construction financing, and they'll need to sell a certain amount of units. Now, if a developer is to postpone or cancel a project, the best thing that can happen to you as a purchaser is you find out quickly, and you find out within that first year and you get your deposit back. I can cite a project in Richmond. It was called Alpha, and those purchasers, similar thing happened where I believe that developer actually filed for bankruptcy. Their deposits were tied up much longer. So when they got their deposits back, when you think about inflation, you think about the value of the dollar, of what that money was when they put it in. They could barely get back into the market in the Fraser Valley, having purchased in Richmond, because that money just doesn't take you as far. So if you find out within a year, Vancouver real estate, it's going to fluctuate, obviously, as we know, but 1 year is much better to find out rather than 3 or 4. In 3 or 4, as we've seen, the prices can go up 20, 25%, and you could literally be priced out. So my advice to you, if you're a pre-sale buyer, is, of course, as I always say, read that disclosure statement. Not that you can do anything about the developer's outs, but just be familiar with what those outs are, and typically when they have to, for example, get their construction financing, when they would have to give you your deposit back, is there going to be interest on top of that? So just make sure you are aware, and just don't take your foot off the gas when you're buying pre-sale. There's risks, but there's rewards as well, right? You're not putting down as much money. You're not having to get the mortgage up front. But then, of course, there are these risks. Back to the development angle, I'm hearing that there's going to be more just like this, at least one more project in the Lower Mainland Fraser Valley that's going to have a similar sort of outcome where the project will get pulled is what I'm hearing. But I think we're going to see more of this from developers, especially if the Bank of Canada raises interest rates again this summer. All right, so I want to jump from Minaroo Square in Richmond and talk about two proposals. They're early stage proposals, I would say, that are being put forth both in New Westminster as well as Coquitlam. In New West here, which is where I live, Columbia Square, that is now getting put forth. The developer, the owner of the property, wants to place 6 to 8 towers there and 2,400 homes. If you're familiar with Columbia Square, I've often viewed this as a very underutilized shopping center. The bulk of it is there essentially for parking. You know, it has anchor tenants, Starbucks, TD, Save On liquor store, but it's just very, very underutilized. So the plan for this developer is 6 to 8 towers, and again, about 2,400 homes into the area. So they're just starting the stage with the New West City. I think it's perfectly located right across from the New West SkyTrain station. So it's a great location for residential, and the premise is that all the space right now is pretty much devoted to parking, and that parking, if it goes below grade, if it goes underground, then you're going to have all that space for commercial at the ground level. You'll have the residential towers, and I just think it's the perfect spot for this type of development, especially being so close to transit. So I know I said that I was going to talk about two developments, but one thing I want to talk about, just got reminded of with the parking scenario, an 80-story tower that's in proposal stage right now in Brentwood. They are essentially looking at having, keep in mind, 80 stories, they are looking at having 14 levels of underground parking. And it's now going back to the city, and the city of Burnaby is deciding whether they want to require the developer to have as many stalls as are part of the rules. So typically how it works is they'll say for every unit that you have, you need to have 1.5 parking stalls, for instance. So because of the sheer size of this 80-story tower, it requires 14 levels of underground parking. It's back over to the city now. The city's going to decide whether they're going to reduce that requirement so that there doesn't have to be as many levels. They're thinking, okay, if there's less parking, then people are going to get rid of their cars. The 15-minute city, these sort of concepts. For myself as a realtor, who lives in my car, I rely so heavily on my car. I just don't see it. I am pro parking, provided the engineers are the ones that are dictating how low we can go. I just don't understand why we don't just use all that space anyways, keep the congestion underground, if you will, because people aren't, in my opinion, just going to get rid of their cars because they don't have parking. They're going to park on the street. It's going to cause even more congestion. But the reason I bring this up, 80 stories, I believe that's going to be the tallest tower in BC, maybe Western Canada, but this is going to be more of a norm now. We're going to have these tall towers, and we're going to have to figure out what to do with parking. So I'm going to be watching that closely to see what the city of Burnaby decides. All right, so jumping back to that other project, and this one I think is very exciting to me. In Southwest Coquitlam, Beedie is looking at bringing 5,500 homes on a 97-acre site. I believe it's 16 towers over the life of the master plan community. It's going to be a riverfront community, and as someone that lives in New West by the river, I can definitely appreciate that. So this is definitely one to watch. They're starting the registration process right now. By the way, guys, if you have questions on any of these developments, you can just send me a note, send me a text, give me a call. Whatever's easier, I will keep you up to date with all of the developments. This is very exciting stuff for me. Southwest Coquitlam, I'm a big Coquitlam guy. I do have an investment unit there, so I'm going to be watching this development closely. There's going to be a ton of retail there. Again, a riverfront community. And finally, what I want to talk about, guys, because I'm talking about Beedie specifically, is I want to talk about the most controversial development proposal that's around in Vancouver right now. Now that the KIT social housing got approved, this one has been on the table for probably about 10 years or so. It's 105 Keefer in Chinatown. So 105 Keefer, if you're not familiar with it, as it sits right now, it's an empty parking lot, and there's been a lot of community uproar about what Beedie wants to do. And Beedie's most recent proposal here is, I believe it's 111 units, no social housing component, just residential market housing component to it. I believe there's going to be either a seniors care at the ground level. I believe it's a seniors care facility or portion of it for seniors care, but there'll be no social housing. This has created a huge uproar. The last time this was on the table was in 2017. It got voted down essentially for, I think it was a fifth or a sixth time. A Supreme Court judge stepped in and said, this is unfairly getting voted down. This needs to get placed onto the table again. So it's back. City Council discussed it 2 or 3 weeks ago, and this coming up Monday, you're watching this on a Saturday, on Monday, we should hear whether this gets approved. The community in Chinatown that are against it are saying that they want it to be social housing, and a big chunk of the business owners are opposing that. I'll give you my opinion. I am pro 105 Keefer. I think Chinatown, I know Chinatown, Gastown, these areas, they've been hit extremely hard since COVID hit. We have, struggling small business owners that are also trying to make a living, and they're trying to make a living in a community that's just, it's in need of revitalization. It's a space where we need developments like this to enrich the community and bring people in that can spend money at these businesses that are barely treading water. I think Gastown, I throw it in the mix as well, but Chinatown, of all the areas in Vancouver proper, I think it's probably most in need of this. So I'm going to definitely be watching this closely, and in next week's video, I will cover what we found out. So again, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss that video. So there you have it, guys. That is the scope of development in the Vancouver area as it stands today. If you learned something in this video or you enjoyed it, hit the like button, because what that does is it takes the video and it sends it out to more people so they can learn from it as well. And again, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss next week's video. And if you're in the Vancouver area and you want to talk about your own real estate situation one-on-one with me, you can book me in the Calendly link below, or you can just send me a text, give me a call, shoot me an email, whatever is easier for you. I'd be happy to chat with you one-on-one. But I want to thank you for watching this week's video, and I look forward to seeing you next week.